Good afternoon, welcome to UK Column News. It is the 21st of October 2014. Happy birthday, Mum. And myself, Louise Collins, Brian Garish and Nick are here in Plymouth. And apologies for the technical issues, but Mike came down and sorted it all out, so we're here.
Yeah, we are. Not sure about the weather. It's been pretty blowy, squally with heavy showers here in Plymouth. Most of the reports across the country are grey, but some periods of sunshine. If you're suffering anything different, perhaps you'd let us know and we will mention it tomorrow. Okay. How does that work? I'm not sure. Well, protests, of course, we see that the Lib Lab Con is driving Britain towards breakdown. This is so that the new government regime, a totalitarian regime, can be installed. What do you need to achieve this? You need people on the streets.
You do.
Over to you.
OK, so since Friday night, hundreds of people have been assembled at Parliament for a 9-day occupation. Occupy Democracy are holding assemblies and talks on social, economic and environmental issues. I think this is great. What has concerned me is that you have a look at this article here on Counterfire, and they are saying that there have been speakers coming along. One of those speakers are none other than Russell Brand. Now, we've talked a lot of Russell Brand, his connections, his tattoos, his girlfriends, his wife and his fortune. And this greatly concerns me because there are all these good people turning out to support something, to make a good change. But then we have a lot of other things coming into. Now, there have been links with the Occupy movement to George Soros. I think we've got the Russell Brand connections here first, haven't we? So, do you want to go through it, Brian? Because you've sorted this one out.
Well, this is shows you the power of the empire, really. So we've got Mr. Rothschild here, banking dynasty. What's the family worth? Well, it's got $1 trillion here, but actually nobody knows. And then we can bring in this lady, Alice. Jacob is the grandfather, and she's also married to Zach. And of course,
the MP.
Yeah, heiress to Grandpa's loot. Well, that's what the expression was. Here's the man himself. So we've got Zach, business partner, married to Alice, and all connected into the money, vast amounts of money that most people couldn't even comprehend. And then we get down to Jemima, editor of the New Statesman, created by the Fabian Society, it would appear. And then, of course, on the end, here he is, and you can trust this man. But what's he talking about? Revolution, 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 and change. So it's an interesting mix. And, of course, as it cynically says on the end, that Russell is campaigning against the banks. But he doesn't really want to mention anything to do with the Rothschild banking family because, well, at the end of the day, they probably control most of the media that he's involved in. But if you've got the dosh, life's no problem.
I think this Russell Brand is a huge distraction, and I am very concerned at the talks that he's giving and that he's giving out. But what interested me also was all these people turning up, and were they aware of the Occupy's involvement with George Soros? So if we go on to this next article here, Economic Policy Journal, they did quite a good article back in 2011, and basically it's Adbusters who started the whole Occupy movement. Soros donated $3.5 million to a company called the Tide Centre. The Tide Centre then donated $185,000 to Adbusters. So there's many links. I urge people to go and have a look. But now, from what I'm hearing at this point in time, that the police, I'll give you what I've been given. Protests have been dispersed, apparently, and at 10:45 this morning, there were 6 women left, surrounded by approximately 30 Met Police officers. Apparently, Jenny Jones of the Green Party was arrested and then quickly released when the police realised who she was. And she put out a statement. She said, I'm sure others were not so fortunate, but she said that she was only released after the people realised who they were and that they didn't want any trouble. And now I believe the whole protest has been dispersed, but I will get more on that for you tomorrow.
So we've also got George Soros, of course, putting in about $2 billion. I think the website actually says 1.9 billion, but through Open Society, this drive for change. So you follow back, and what you see happening is movements which are suddenly established worldwide. If you talk to most activists, it's incredibly difficult to get people motivated, coordinated, and out on the streets. But we have these mysterious websites which suddenly appear. They're very polished. They usually have no single person identified with them. If you try and contact them, you can only email. And if you dig into these, you start to find the connections with these very, very powerful banking interests.
Reset was another one, wasn't it?
Reset is ongoing.
Is
Lou,
ongoing.
So we're
Is
going to
another
say
one, yeah.
is another one. And perhaps we should come in at a different angle, because if there's protest on the streets, you might expect to see Unison. And just have a little look at this, because sent through to us this morning, and our viewer pointed out that if you take a look at Unison, you come upon Dave Prentice, the General Secretary, highest elected post in the union. He speaks up for Unison members, campaigns for public services, and leads the union. What a great man he is. Make sure we know who we're speaking about. There we are. Well, surprising connection, because if we hop across to the Bank of England and have a look at the Court of Directors, very fancy name for these immensely powerful people who are all involved in the private financial industry, now given a post to run the nation's finances. Who do we find? Where is he? We should be able to highlight him. We just find the same Dave Prentice, General Secretary of Unison.
Wow.
So what is this man doing? He's campaigning for the ordinary man and woman literally on the streets. He's saying he's looking after their interests. But when he isn't looking after their interests, he's hopped across to the other side, and he's working with these immensely powerful and wealthy and totally unaccountable people. And let's remember that Mark Carney, as Mike likes to call him, not even British, he's Canadian, but with a massive ability to control what's happening to money in UK.
Can I just correct something that I said earlier? Rothschild's apparently worth over 500 trillion, not over 1 trillion.
That's why I made
500.
the point, because nobody knows. We're dealing with sums of money that you can't even imagine.
No.
We're getting into quadrillions of money. These people are so obscenely wealthy, it just defies belief. They could change problems
They could change the world.
of feeding people
Yeah.
in whole countries if they spent some of their loose change. So we just hop back to Unison so that we see the full flavour of it. But here is this man saying that he's proud to march for fair pay. And he says that marching under the banner of Britain needs a pay rise, we sent a powerful message to the government. Our members did not cause the recession. They didn't cause the banks to fail. And it is completely unfair that public service workers have been forced to bear the brunt of austerity. Well, absolutely true, Mr. Prentice. But of course, the people you're mixing with in the Bank of England are the people that caused the austerity.
And I wonder how much he had a pay rise of.
Well,
across the board in every job that he does.
I think there has been some mention of his pay, and it's a lot of money. We'll find out.
And he obviously gets money from Unison as well to be their chairman.
Well, who knows what he's involved with?
Yeah.
I think you start to see the hypocrisy of these people. But there you are. If you're, oh wait a minute, we've got a news flash. He's paid
92,187.
So there we are.
For Unison.
Just for Unison. So who knows what comes in via the Bank of England. But if you're out there, you're getting worried about how much money you're earning through the public services. Life is tough. Well, perhaps you should be interested in the fact that your General Secretary is part of the gang that's creating the austerity in the first place. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Mind-boggling.
Totally.
So we've got the protests coming on the streets, and then we see interesting little articles like this from the Telegraph. And it's talking about a bomb scare outside London's Gherkin building. This is the tall, slightly plump glass building known as the Gherkin. And quick as a flash, there's a bomb scare, there's roads cordoned off, and there's a controlled explosion. I'd encourage you to read this article, because what's key here is what is not said. There is absolutely no statement on the status of the taxi, why it was left there, Did it have a mechanical breakdown? Did the taxi driver go to pick somebody up in the building? All the public is told is, well, they left a taxi outside the building, so we had to go and blow it up. And then, hey presto, related articles, let's wind up the angst, bomb scare outside the Bank of England, bomb scare at Barclays, bomb scare, passengers learn of bomb scare on Twitter, Newcastle University, bombs. Terror. And no substance to the article at all. Who blew it up? Why was it blown up? Why was the taxi there in the first place?
Okay.
So on the streets of Britain at the moment, we've got the protest, we've got the austerity, we've got the angst, we've got taxis being blown up with the police. And what does that allow you to do? Well, it allows you to get on and create trouble elsewhere. And we just thought we'd give a mention to the Swedish submarine story, which has been popping up in virtually every paper. These are the sorts of headlines. Sweden widens search for Russian submarine. It says that stealth ships have been pushing south through the Stockholm archipelago as Netherlands deny Kremlin claim that the craft is Dutch. So we've got these very emotive pictures. Of course, this vessel is not looking for submarines. It's doing something else at that sort of speed. But what else have we got? Well, we have this one here. This is the Swedish armed forces saying there has been a sighting of this submarine, but we're not too sure what's been going on. And one of the senior officers commenting on it. And this is what it comes back to, which is the fact that somebody in Sweden saw this tiny speck in the water and said, my goodness, this is a submarine. It's fascinating because either this is a body going at vast speed, or this is quite a big vessel pumping out a lot of air to make all that wash in the water. But as a result of that, we now have a massive attack on the Russians. This is a Russian submarine, Russia, but absolutely no evidence whatsoever that it's Russian. But it gets better, because if we come back to look at the Independent here, Baltic nations tense as search for Russian submarine continues. Here's the comment by the Swedish Rear Admiral Anders Grenstedt, and he's claiming that the armed forces had made 3 separate sightings of foreign undersea activity in the past few days. Amid rising speculation, the submarine is Russian. Now, of course, if the activity is undersea, you're not going to sight it. So what he's actually talking about is seeing something above the sea, but not even he's saying that it's Russian. But this is the Independent article. Amid rising speculation, the submarine is Russian. So, of course, you can click on that and you think, well, here I am. I'm going to be taken to the evidence the submarine is Russian. So let's click on that. And where does it take us? It takes us straight back to the original Independent report, which said it was a Russian submarine with no evidence at all. So there's something very interesting going on. Of course, what's now beginning to be said overseas is that this is another massive witch hunt to raise the pressure on the Russians, because, of course, David Cameron and the Americans are not getting the result they want from activity down in the Ukraine. So this is painting the Russians as back active as they were in the Cold War. What's really going on seems to be media hype. But we'll have a little look into that in more detail for tomorrow. So if that's going on in Sweden, then this little one is getting lost in the woodwork. So the UK has said that it's now going to use Reaper drones ready to attack ISIS in Syria and Iraq. This is the meat of the story. British airstrikes against ISIS came after a Commons vote authorising military engagement in Iraq, with David Cameron stressing he would seek a second mandate from MPs if it was deemed necessary to extend the fight to Syria. But the government maintains that no such permission is necessary to carry out reconnaissance flights or even armed action. the latter if it's a matter of national security, such as the rescue of British hostages being held by ISIS. So what we've got here is the government now deciding it can invade the airspace of sovereign states overseas. We don't need to talk to Parliament. All we need is for David, our King Cameron, to say that he's going to operate his private military. And here we've got the first steps of taking control of the air environment over Syria, which of course is going to allow massive pressure to be brought to bear on Assad. So if we look at the situation across UK, we've got people being distracted to protests on the streets. We've got bomb scares. We've got Swedish submarines. But what's going on in the background? Well, we are slowly but surely commencing a military attack on Syria and Iraq, of course. Phone hacking.
Okay, the Mirror is reporting that yesterday it emerged that police are hacking into hundreds of emails, texts and voicemails after a loophole is being exploited. This comes after it was revealed that police obtained journalists' phone records to find out who their sources were. If messages have been sent and are in storage, police just need a production order to get the telecom or computer firms to hand over the datas. Now, yesterday, Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg said police must be stripped of the power to obtain journalists' phone records on the say-so of a senior officer. He said journalists should be able to go after information where there is a clear interest to do so without fear of being snooped upon. It is a big thing to say to the press in this country, we can demand where you got your information from and we don't even need to go to a judge. And there was done a poll in the Mirror, and 85%, it's probably gone up since then, 84% have said no to police having special privilege to snoop on journalists.
The key bit, Louise, is the police have done it anyway. They've just gone on and done it, which effectively is breaking.
And they're still doing it.
They're still doing it. They're breaking the law. And where's the policy coming from? Well, the policy is coming from ACPO, which of course is a private company in the first place. So private companies controlling the police breaking the law, certainly as they did around Ian Puddick, unleashing counter-terrorist teams on Ian's business and private house. And suddenly we seem to have a few journalists beginning to wake up.
The thing is, it isn't just journalists. This could happen to anybody. They can use this loophole to actually bug in on anybody at all.
Absolutely, if they're not watching.
Yeah, if they're not watching, exactly. Okay, this is an article that Pippa King sent me this morning. Thank you, Pippa. And it's actually an article back from May of this year, but it's worth everyone being reminded of it. It's about the Department of Education allowing schools to use top-of-the-art surveillance equipment, supposedly to crack down on drug dealing within schools. May of last year, 2 schools in Herefordshire, 1 in Liverpool and 1 school in Waltham Forest took up the offer from WatchBod to install cameras in schools. Well, now we can kind of move on 6 months, and this article came about yesterday. They're using in Leicestershire, police are now using facial recognition and techniques, and they're trialling the NEC's facial recognition equipment. Apparently, the BBC even quoted that early tests were producing 45% ID rate. And Leicestershire Police had now purchased the entire software. So right across Leicestershire Police, you're going to be watched on. So you're being watched on within the schools. Your children are being watched on within the schools. And I'm sorry, it isn't just senior schools and academies. There are cameras all across the majority of primary schools now as well.
So the schools being turned into prisons.
Police forces now using this facial recognition, and the whole Big Brother watch is getting bigger and bigger and moving faster and faster.
Until we stop it by withdrawing our consent and, of course, giving our MPs a good cuddle so that the decent ones wake up to the fact of what they're creating. And since many people tell us, Brian, UK column must be watched, we must be looked at by the police all the time, we agree. But just in case Leicestershire Police need any help, I'll just say that I am Brian Gerrish. I'm sitting on the left of Louise Collins, and you can check that out with your facial recognition software.
Exactly.
Well, that brings us to the Gulag, and how interesting that after UK Column has been flagging up the appalling treatment of child abuse victim Melanie Shaw in Sodexo's HM Prison Peterborough, suddenly we get a flurry of articles in the mainstream press all about prisons. Just a coincidence. So we'll start off with The Guardian here, and they're going straight for the jugular that prison whistleblowers in England and Wales are being threatened with dismissal. This is another good story, which I encourage you to go and read for yourselves. But the picture there is of a lady prison officer. She discovered things were not right in Lewes Prison, so she decided to speak out to the local press. And that has now raised a raging reaction where the state wants her to be shut up as soon as possible. So all sorts of things being mentioned. This is part of the article. Whistleblowers in the prison service in England and Wales are being threatened with dismissal for raising serious concerns about their ability to keep inmates safe and their fears over soaring levels of violence. The attempt to silence staff has been condemned by a Conservative Member of Parliament, notice no name there, who was approached in confidence by a number of officers working at a prison in his constituency in the summer. Now, that business about keeping inmates safe is very important because however dangerous, unpleasant or violent a prisoner is, once they're in prison, they are totally helpless. They have to rely on the state to feed them, care for them, protect them, even from other prisoners. So that is not something we should be mocking. No. That is our responsibility for people who have been sentenced and imprisoned. Well, of course, the Ministry of Justice said it's completely untrue to suggest that any member of staff raising legitimate concerns will face disciplinary actions. Any concerns raised by staff members are taken extreme. So this is the normal waffle by the Ministry of Justice. And we just bring you back to HM Prison Peterborough, this Sodexo French company making profit out of British prisoners. We know from what's been said to us already that there are members of their staff too frightened to speak out about abuses going on in that prison.
Yeah, and we know the staff are watching there, and they should be brave.
Well, some of them are brave, and we also say, since we reported a lot of bad things about HM Prison Peterborough, we know that there are some extremely good staff in that prison, and indeed some staff who were prepared to risk coming under pressure to try and help Melanie.
That's good news.
And here we are, the heart of what happens when prisons get out of control. So now the government's admitting that suicide rates are rising dramatically in prisons. Self-inflicted deaths amongst inmates rose by 69%, 2013-14, a total of 88 lives lost, and the highest level for 10 years. And of course, whilst Melanie Shaw was in HM Prison Peterborough, she was talking about suicides taking place and people jumping off second floor balconies, resulting not in death but broken legs. This is the appalling state of prisons under the Lib Lab Con. And of course, the BBC can't sort out child abuse in its own organisation, but it's going to report problems in other sectors of society. So widening cracks in the system. And we will mention Melanie. We do ask anybody who would like to support Melanie and can get to Nottingham on the 28th of October. That's the start of what's booked as a 3-day trial. Remember, the CPS spending your money, public money, to bring this lady into trial. To date, it doesn't appear any substantive evidence against her. But if you can be there to support her, of course, the public present in the court makes a huge difference. And we'll mention as well Robert Greene. He's now on somewhere around his 154th day of what we call house arrest. He's still on bail and having to report to his local police every day, although what's his crime? Trying to protect children from abuse. silence.
I know. We say it every time, and there isn't any words to say it.
There's nothing you can say. We'll do the next best thing, which is to bring Ken Clarke on screen, because, many people think this man is disgusting, disgraceful. So he's now saying that if you dare to comment on immigration, you think that immigration should be restricted, you're a bigot. He's not a bigot. We're all bigots. And he's now saying there's a wave of hysteria over immigration. If there are any immigration controls brought in, then Britain's economy is going to collapse. We're going to fail in the eyes of the European Union. What is this man about?
Well, if he wants to play the slagging game, I can call him some names.
Well, yeah, we could do, but we're not going to do because it's UK column. But we just want to remind people that this is really what this man is about. So he's the bigot, but he wants to run secret courts where people go in to be tried in secret by an appointed judge. This is a very, very dangerous man. And clearly, by the amount of time he gets in the press, he's controlling a lot of things. Is this part of it, we wonder? So we've got a policeman here who says that the police can't do anything with paedophiles because there's simply too many of them coming out the woodwork. So Mr. Bristow, who doesn't really know how many child victims there are, is saying 50,000 people are accessing indecent images of children each year. The police can't arrest them. Well, I don't know why not, because the police can arrest people who are making Twitter comments.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can
and loads are going to be let off the hook, aren't they?
Yeah. You can make a Twitter comment and you're picked up instantly, but the police can't actually do anything once they've detected somebody. So what is this about? I don't know. Exaro, we've reported this before, but in light of the child abuse inquiry, we're going to bring this up again. Lord Britton has left his vice chairman job at UBS Investment Bank. Maybe they'll put him on the Bank of England now.
Yeah, they're saying that UBS vice he stepped down as UBS vice chairman. Apparently, it was actually 2 months. 2 months ago, and he was handed the lost. Sorry, it wasn't 2 months ago. After 2 months prior to that, it being exposed that he had the dossier of the VIP Westminster paedophiles. In June, Leon Britton was interviewed under caution over an alleged rape. He was named by Salmon Danzig as the man Jeffrey Dickens handed the lost dossier to. But apparently, according to Azaro, if you try and email Mr. Britton at UBS now, you just get an automated reply saying he no longer works there, and apparently UBS are refusing to comment on why he is no longer all of a sudden not working there.
So mucky mix with people in powerful positions and the banks, and well, enter Theresa May, because we've now got the statement about the supposed inquiry into child sexual abuse. We're saying that Theresa May is announcing the most transparent cover-up of child abuse in British history. This is part of her statement. And she's appointed the panel members to the independent inquiry panel of experts, which will consider whether public bodies and other non-state institutions have taken seriously their duty of care to protect children from sexual abuse. So this inquiry is nothing to do with investigating the abuse of children and how to protect children. It's to see whether public bodies might unfortunately have failed. And then, of course, she says that we should rely on this team of experts, excuse me, Sharon Evans, Ivor Frank, the list goes on, with, of course, Fiona Wolf, CBE, who is going to carry out a robust and thorough inquiry. So let's have a look at the wolf in children's clothing. We're saying straight off that this is an absolute cover-up from start to finish. But Exaro were twittering a lot of detail this morning, so we've summarised it. Thank you, Exaro. The inquiry is going to consider all information from various published and unpublished reviews, court cases, investigations that have so far concluded. Nothing is being said about taking evidence from survivors. Well, you don't want to talk to the victims.
No, you don't. No.
You certainly don't want
No,
to
you
talk
need to
to
keep
them
them quiet, don't you?
because that could confuse the cover-up. We're going to have an inquiry to cover government departments, police, prosecuting authorities, schools, local authorities, health, churches, political parties. Armed forces are also going to be covered by it, but don't go near the victims. It's only going to be looking at England and Wales. So very conveniently, Northern Ireland's going to be left out of it, and Jersey, it would appear. You don't want to go too near those because that could lead you
You don't want to
into...
go too near Scotland either, do you?
You don't want to go near Scotland or anywhere there's been some pretty serious child abuse. They're going to go way back to 1970, so this gives us plenty of opportunity to say it was all historic. But the panel can extend if the evidence shows that to be necessary. Well, they can't extend past the present, so perhaps they could go back into the mid-1800s and see if there was anything nasty going on in London.
Yeah, maybe.
I think actually Fiona Woolf comes from the mid-1800s by the look of it. So the inquiry is going to be considering whether the institutions failed over child sex abuse, and they're going to say what further action is needed. So if they failed, they're going to have a long think to say, well, what can we do to stop them failing?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the abuse goes on.
And the victims are still not being heard.
And here she is. Fiona Wood's now disclosed in a letter to Theresa May that Lord and Lady Britain attended dinner parties at her home. So totally independent, no problems there. She also went to 2 dinner parties at the Britons' home, so cosy little relationship, and of course they're neighbours. And she's also met Lady Britain on a number of occasions for coffee, but don't worry about that either.
No, nothing to worry about. Nothing to cover up, is there, Miss Woolf?
No, it's transparent. It is a transparent cover-up. This is the website, which we'd encourage you to go and have a look at. So all the details here, but this is what intrigued us, because this inquiry is itself linked to organisations such as the NSPCC and NAPAC, who many victims say either failed to help them, or some of the victims allege that the abuse was carried out with the blind eye from these charities. So who is going to be investigating NSPCC and others? Because NSPCC boasts that it works with every child protection team in the country. It's got its Royal Charter, which we were talking about yesterday. And now here they are, part of the independent panel inquiry.
I mean, first of all, we contacted all of these people to try and get help and support for Mel. Did we not?
Well, NSPCC didn't want to know. They got quite aggressive on the phone.
NAPAC weren't great either.
Well, they got pretty aggressive also, and I have reason to believe that NAPAC wrote a letter to Melanie Shaw, in which they weren't very happy that she maintained they hadn't helped her, but more on that in due course. So we'll just leave that as the most transparent Tory cover-up of child abuse in British political history. Should we be worried about state of the nation? I think we should. Here's a remarkable story in the Express. This actually is make-up, but the article is about this young lady who's the young man's sister. She's been to media college, so obviously she's learnt a lot of good things to enlighten and brighten her life. So she went and made her brother up. He frightened 2 children and some members of the public. They called the police because they thought he'd suffered serious assault. But not to worry, because the police thought it was funny. And the young lady herself says, I know it sounds bad, but I was delighted to get the reaction I did. I just feel bad that I scared a couple of kids in the process. If I can make someone believe that my brother was a zombie, then my work is done. So this is pretty sick stuff.
Nice girl.
But what is the paper up to here? Is this itself a sick publicity stunt to promote sick makeup and young people? What is this about?
I wonder if she helped do any of the creations for some of the crisis actors coming out at big events and things, makeup for them. She's openly saying she's a media student. She's done it for a reason. I wonder if this is a little project.
Well, we're seeing quite a lot of use of the term zombies. It's almost as though part of the, I'm going to say, the government's agenda is to have everybody walking around totally dumb out of their mind as zombies. And if you can scare young children in the process, then they're to be congratulated.
Shocking.
If anybody knows the media school that was training this young lady, we'd certainly like to know.
Right. Okay, this story, Breaking Bad. Don't know how many of the viewers and listeners have heard or watched Breaking Bad, but it was a TV drama series that was on over in America, and I think you can pick it up on Netflix over here, about a school chemistry teacher, hard up on his luck, ends up producing crystal meth, teams up with a young guy. It's full of drugs, sex, violence, and, well, Toys R Us are selling a doll. And here they are. Here are the dolls, complete with the meth suits. So this is the main character. Here we go. And they're the two characters from the film on the other side. If you go to the next one, those are their little outfits, their meth-making outfits. And there you go. And these are being sold to children in Toys R Us in the States. Not sure if they've got over here, but how nice is that?
Well,
Shocking.
We just say to people, perhaps if you use Toys R Us, you might think of not using Toys R Us, but decision is yours, of course.
Okay, going to do a lot more on this tomorrow.
Time for a glass of water.
Yeah, time for a glass of water. Ireland legislation, Irish Water are relying upon Irish Water are relying upon to install the water meters into dwellings, maybe an apparent breach of Article 40.5 of the 1937 Irish Constitution. Apparently people are waking up to this injustice that is happening. Tens of thousands of protests over water charges and meters happened last week. Many arrests were made, and police are using wearable cameras to capture any antisocial behaviour by the protests and evidence gathering. 1 million have failed to register with the semi-state company because of the introduction of the water charges and the installations of meters. So lots going on over in Ireland. And Vinny from People's Internet Radio, he will be live with us tomorrow to let viewers in this country know exactly what's going on in Ireland with regards to them putting legislation on people's right to water.
So there we are.
Yeah.
It's getting increasingly obvious to watch what's happening in this country, which is organised, orchestrated breakdown of politics in society. We've got to get a change in Westminster, and that change, in our view, needs to include the removal of the main political parties and certainly the whips. We need to get decent men and women back into Westminster to start the turnaround. Is it possible? We think so. If you haven't already done it, you might like to join us at the British Constitution Group conference, which is Saturday, the 1st of November. Tickets are selling quite quickly now, so do get in time. We'll be talking about what is going on in the country and what we can do about it. And of course, on the Sunday, we're also teaming up with people talking about health and how to look after yourself and protect your health.
Yeah, he was on my show again, Dr. Graham Downing, on Monday.
Good.
He was brilliant. I think we're going to be playing it out this week, actually, on the show on here. So
excellent.
Thanks a lot.
If you can't think of what to do with yourself this afternoon, you may consider tweeting, writing emails or letters to MPs or people within local authorities pointing out what is going on. Be professional, be polite, you can be robust as well, but action conquers fear, so don't sit there fretting, get out there and do something. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.